Hello, welcome to today's webinar, all about strategy, why strategy is crucial to the success of your crowdfunding campaign. We're going to talk about what we're seeing in the market right now, which campaigns are winning, which need extra support, how a marketing plan from the get-go, from the beginning, could be your path to your goal. Privileged to have Abby Kerr with us here today, a lead account manager here at DNA. Abby, thanks for being on.
Thanks, Jason. I'm happy to be here.
And Abby, you've been doing amazing work here, as we've heard from clients. Can you share a bit about your background and familiarize the audience a bit with your work?
Sure. I started working with startups after I finished my graduate degree. And I've been working remotely since well before it was popular, so 2010. And I've worked with startups all over the world, mostly in the social impact arena. Most recently, I worked for the Kohler Company, where I was part of their Innovation for Good product group. And so my job there was to work through marketing plans for a variety of different product types. And I really enjoy that. So something that I like about the strategy part is get to put patterns together, right? I get to research. I know we have a sort of a theme for how crowdfunding campaigns go right. And then I get a chance to apply that to each individual, campaign that we have. And I really enjoy that, right? So strategy is something that really needs to happen at the beginning of a campaign because there are a lot of different pieces that are involved in crowdfunding and it's not necessarily easy, right? So I really appreciate it when our clients take the time to spend that sort of the thinking time to get the campaign off to a good start. It's really critical to start strong. So
Absolutely.
a bit about
And really like how you point that out. People don't believe how many issuers there are out there on equity crowdfunding platforms, any type of investor marketing for that matter, that want to skip these steps. Look at marketing as a ladder thought. And we're going to get into some of the stats, going to speak about, our experience a bit further here and why all of this matters. But we speak with the majority of these groups, whether we work with them or not. And, the industry can use more success metrics in the moment in terms of marketing. This is where it really all begins for us. To tell you a bit more about me before we get into today's presentation and the deck. I'm a marketer. I was in ad tech before this, got involved in investor marketing around 2015 for accredited investor raises. To date, we've worked on over 300 of those, have seen those campaigns produce hundreds of millions in capital. I've worked on digital asset campaigns that surpass those metrics as well too, real estate, you name it. All of what you hear today is based on those learnings. They say the only way to be an expert at something is to fail at it every way you can. I don't know if we've done that quite yet, but we've certainly seen campaigns work, not work, ask ourselves what were the meaningful drivers afterwards. And that is where we're getting the information for this deck here today. And didn't get into my why. Abby, you got into your why. I feel like we understand why you do this, which I really like. I'm infatuated with growth at a business level and taking on more market share. Was doing this in business plans one point, was working with top 100 advertisers. I find the most excitement, the most fulfillment from doing this at the early stage levels, and marketing being at the front line of that. That's why we work on 40, 50 of these campaigns at a time, different verticals, do whatever we can to give issuers the best shot at hitting their goal. And again, the first thing I recommend when anyone asks me, how do I make my campaign work, is put together a strategy. And told you a bit about us. Abby, you had mentioned the importance of a strategy, just starting at the why level. If a group's asking you, hey, can we just start advertising tomorrow, next week? Could we just start getting some posts up and some outreach out? Why would you push them to slow down and begin with a plan?
Well, it's easy to want to see results right away. I mean, we all want to see results right away, and these campaigns are short-lived. So I understand their sense of urgency a lot of the time. My favorite clients are the ones who come to us before they've gone live so that we can have a good think around what kinds of messages their competitors are using that work, what kinds of strategies are other people using that are proving successful, right? So I think that there's a critical moment at the very beginning of the campaign. And where some of our clients struggle is that they, I don't know if you can hear it in the background. I apologize for any of the crowd noise. Okay. They often come to us if they want to skip the strategy, having already started and struggling, right? So it is important to spend the time really before your campaign goes live and take stock of which moving piece. There are many pieces, different parts of marketing that you can choose to utilize, right? There's social posts, there are ads. Those are definitely very important for, bringing your message to new audiences, right? There are tons of due diligence pieces that support your offering page. Then you would need to have a lot of content out there, because any investor is going to want to do a variety of due diligence activities before they decide to make their purchase, really. So ads are important. Other kinds of outreach are important. I really like LinkedIn and email outreach. I think those are really strong channels. But you have to spend some time getting it all ready and thinking about it and preparing. So the strategy time is really crucial into honing in the messaging and and coming up with a plan, because there are a lot of different moving pieces.
Absolutely. And they say the real value of a plan isn't the finished product, but the process itself. And asking yourself those questions before the activation versus during. Why scramble to determine what's going to be posted day 3 of week 4 versus determine that out of the gate in your plan? Is a third party who's looking at this plan going to be swept off their feet by the content? Perhaps not, but they can see that further depth. These plans can be used with a third party, such as your agency, a consultant, a campaign quarterback, an advisor, a lead investor that maybe has been brought on to fund the campaign compliantly. This could be used with your portal, but being able to say, hey, here's exactly how we're going to get to 1.07 million. Here's how we're going to get to 5 million, which few campaigns do on a Reg CF filing, which is the cap, 75 million on a Reg A plus. This is what we're going to do to get there. You can have it broken all the way back from the final goal to the month before that, to the month before that, algorithmically. Here's how many conversions. Here's the average investment from each of those conversions. Here's how much traffic we're going to need to produce that. Every step of the funnel, average conversion rates, getting all the way there. So this isn't just fluff. Hey, we're going to do some social posts. We're going to look to do a press release. By the way, I see that all the time in the marketing plan section of a business plan. We're going to use influencers and run some social ads. That's it. Not saying those are the only tactics, meaning it's a 2-paragraph explanation of what's going to happen for marketing. As a marketer, I could tell you there's so many things that aren't taken into account there. And this depth shows that you've thought it out, maybe even have a plan B, how we're going to optimize, what we're going to do to create the next set of content if this is not working out of the gate, which statistically it won't. So what is a strategy deck? It's a plan of action for what you're going to do at different stages of your campaign. We're going to go into the 8-point plan here. I've written about this in Forbes. I lead workshops on just this. I actually do a 12-hour version. Not getting into that today. We're going to streamline through it, but you get the idea. There's a lot to discuss here. In fact, if you reach out to us later, I'll send you a checklist. I have 2 versions of that. One of them is 255 points. So, there's so much that can be looked at here. As I mentioned, I worked with a lot of top 100 advertisers before this, and they would spend 6 months putting together a plan. In some cases, they'd have a whole agency just for planning, then an agency for activation. But that's how important this is. So do not think, hey, I'm live on an equity crowdfunding portal. They say 10% I should spend on marketing over time. It's a high cost of capital, but I'm hitting the full goal. So let me just spend it. Statistically, that's not going to happen. We reference stats where less than 20% of campaigns hit the 7-figure mark, let alone the full 5 million on these initiatives. Half of the campaigns right now are producing under 10K a month. Based on stats that we're looking at, the top 10%, about 130K, 120K a month. Tough to even get to 1.07 million at those levels with the time allotments that the portals provide before you could get an extension. So
That's a really good point, Jason.
yeah,
Right? I mean, it's not an easy ask. Crowdfunding is not easy, right? And you really need to have a plan in place ahead of time because there's a lot of competition, right?
absolutely. And, it's beyond just competition of, hey, these other guys are out there and, they want it more than you. And really a matter of competition in the sense of if you have a start engine campaign and there's 166 live campaigns there, 180 live campaigns there, what's going to make you stick out? And if you drive investors, even your first degree networks, friends, family, customer bases, and you drive them to start engine, as Abby mentioned, there's a due diligence process. There's a consideration process. This isn't a impulse buy. It's not a infomercial buy at the end of this first visit type of feel for the majority of audiences. It's usually somewhere around 7 to 17 touch points that they convert, even your first degree connections. And there's recommendations for reminders to their audience, to those audiences. Make sure you convert, make sure you do this by this date. So if you drive an audience to the platform and then they see a Reg A plus with 13 million raised, 20 million raised, if they see 5 Reg CFs over $1 million, what's to say they don't go there? There is a momentumness that's gauged by the audience. I like to say momentum is investable. Momentum is attractive. If they come back 3 times and those top campaigns have gone up 10, 20, 100K each time that those prospective investors visit, what seems like a better bet to them and for their portfolio? Because at the end of the day, they want to see growth from these campaigns. Sure, they want to be part of the experience. They want to support you. But those audiences get limited. You really need thousands of investors if we look at the top campaigns to hit your full goal. So you need to be able to showcase that momentum. Otherwise, you lose it. And as Abby's saying, there is a competition factor around this.
Yep, the strategy is important. We have to have a plan for how we're going to reach people and tell them why they should invest. It's, and we do have plans, but you have to take the time to think it through really before you launch, ideally.
Yeah. Absolutely. Has to be before. If you take a couple weeks during your campaign to do this, maybe you're starting a new activation, that can work. I don't want you to think, hey, we missed that boat, so we can't do it any further. But plan early. Planning is everything. I think you've seen it in some of the marketing. If you fail to plan, I would argue that part of you feels that you plan to fail. And I see that when speaking to issuers. Well, we're going to try this out. We're not sure if it's going to work. We're going to spend something. And that's fine. You should have reasonable doubt looking at the statistics. But the way to address that doubt is not to let it linger and come to fruition as much as get ahead of it. So why having a strategy is important to the raise. Abby, why is it important to do it for an equity crowdfunding campaign versus just a marketing campaign of, hey, we're going to do ongoing efforts for e-commerce, B2B lead gen, user acquisition? We get it, 12 months, 24 months, but a 2-month push, a 3-month push, which some insurers are expecting. Well, why should they have a plan for such a short run?
It's a long sprint. You need to have a plan because there are so very many different components to it, right? You want to have the right kinds of ads, and we are always optimizing that part of it. We often see that we're always encouraging clients to do more informal sort of selfie style videos because we're seeing that's working for people. We're all, if you don't plan to have new content along the way, then it might come as a surprise that, oh, I didn't really have time. No, I have to go track down so and so and get this set up so that we can, you want to have a plan in advance so that you're not scrambling. Um, and, if you know that you have to be managing your LinkedIn account and you're checking you just have to be prepared because there are very many different things. Um, and it's different than when you're just doing your normal business activities, right? Because you have different style of messaging. Another common problem we see with our clients is that they really want to focus on their product, which to me totally makes sense. But we have to look at a different type of customer in this case, where it's actually someone who's investing in the company that wants to know about, top reasons to invest, the market opportunity, the investor team, rather than like the widget, the specific thing that's being sold. That's not really the product that we're selling for an equity crowdfunding campaign. So it's often quite a big shift in terms of how our clients are thinking about positioning themselves. Is really a different kind of sale. So I think that's important to think about.
Yeah. And with the shorter window of time, you can be more intentional about the prospective investor experience. So, we mentioned the word roadmap. You can do this from day one all the way through the completion of the campaign. We'll put together messages for each milestone, 100K, 250, 500. We'll prepare at the beginning closing messaging, 2 weeks left. There's different ways that we say it for each portal and to follow rules and be compliant, but closing soon type messaging. We have to be careful not to mention terms unless we're doing tombstone types of content. But you can literally prepare the entire campaign. If you extend it, can postpone closing messaging to that later point. Again, you want to be able to show that traction, that movement all the way through. So what is going to be exciting? What is going to get audiences more interested in participating and seeing themselves with a long-term connection to the brand, with an interest? Being a shareholder, why are they going to want to take part in this if it's stagnant and it's the same messaging all the way through? You need to be able to show, hey, these are new partnerships we've put together. Look at these new clients. Look at the growth in the number of customers we've had. Check out this endorsement. Look at this third party validation from someone in the industry, from someone known in the investor community. Look at what we've done here. Look at where we were featured there. We've had some of the top issuers in the space as clients, and we're really only an extension of them. I give the founders all the credit, truly. And I could tell you the top campaigns we've worked on, the founders 1 week are speaking at this conference, the next week are winning an award over here. The week after that, they're on this podcast. It's that type of feeling you want to give the prospective investors of, oh, wow, these guys are everywhere. They're growing to these levels. I want to be a part of this. I want to be
really
on that moving train.
Jason, I love that you're talking about all those things because those are like the key types of content that we really want to see every crowdfunding campaign doing, right? The milestone posts, the regular portal updates, there's a huge amount of energy that I think investors get from seeing a really active founder, and that really strengthens any campaign. So I'm really glad you mentioned those things.
Absolutely. And glad you added that because it is the key point here and what we're trying to create across the campaign. So explaining the importance of it here, going to talk about where it lives in the strategy. But just to wrap up this page, helps us determine how many viewers and awareness we need in campaigns using various metrics. We're going to go over an algorithm with how many impressions are needed to produce the necessary amount of clicks and traffic to produce the necessary amount of conversions. And conversions have multiple stages. We're looking with some of the portals and on some of these issuers for how many audiences are viewing content, which ones move to the add to cart event, to the initiate checkout event, all the way to the purchase event, which we can see all the way through analytics. And we can pinpoint where traffic's falling off, look to add more at those points during optimizations if it's not working. And it sets the stage to showcase goals and ensure they are met. We're able to be very productive in optimization conversations if we know where we're going. If we're just saying, hey, we wanted 5 million, we haven't raised 200K yet, it's not working, let's scrap channels, it's not really going to do any good for anybody. If we're able to say, hey, we've taken on 10K this week, it's okay, let's see what's working, and if we could scale more of it, let's try to optimize to the pockets of performance that are working. Looks like we're getting great traffic here, but it's falling off at that stage. Can we add something at that point in the funnel? Those are marketing discussions. And the way we measure marketing talent here at DNA is problem solving abilities. Most marketing campaigns, as I was mentioning, don't do everything they're supposed to, and really right out of the gate. And this is true whether you're looking at the top apps, theatrical films, any major automotive company, tier one, whatever it may be. The reason they have so many agencies and so many marketing teams internally is because not everything goes to plan. There are inherent obstacles with marketing. There's inherent obstacles with fundraising. Some of the stats I've seen for the percentage of campaigns that are funded at the VC level are astonishingly low. So work against the odds and do so by having this model. Abby, what are we saying here on this page? It sounds like we're just looking to emphasize more on why it's important to hit these goals.
Yeah, it's important to have a strategy because we know that there are really three phases to a campaign that we see are pretty standard, right? There's the first phase, which if you don't come out of the gates with at least 6 figures, then you're kind of in trouble, because that second phase it needs to build on the momentum established in the first phase, and then we often see a very strong finish for campaigns. So we see a lot of traction right at the end. So there are different phases, and there are different things to do at different points in the strategy, and you want to know what you're getting into at the front end. So I think that, yeah, you want to lay out your goals. And sometimes part of the conversation that I really enjoy is at the very front end, where I'm just starting to get to know the clients, and there are strategic questions that we need to work through. What's the minimum? How long is the raise? What are the key messages? How are you positioning yourself against other key players in the market? There are questions that you should be asking yourself before you launch. And I think that's a really critical part of the strategy that I really enjoy, right? When we really start getting into it with our clients, and then they have aha moments, right? And we can figure it out together, and we can problem solve together. I enjoy that part of it. I really like solving problems, and I think that's a fun part of the strategy. So anyway,
Yeah, exactly. And want to hop into some of the moving pieces here. I know we're going over all the reasons, and as you mentioned, what needs to come out during the early stages of the campaign for the deal to be validated by cold audiences. You have your first degree audiences, and they want to see you succeed. They may put in the minimum amount, maybe a few thousand, maybe there's a few larger investors in there, but you should really be looking to push past the 100K mark in the first day, maybe first few days of the campaign. These days, I would say $250,000. I think you push past a large percentage of campaigns on platforms like Start Engine and WeFunder if you're past the 200K mark. There's a good amount over 100. A lot gets stuck in that 100 to 200K level. And you could look at King's Crowd for all these metrics. You could go to the show all tabs on these portals and scroll down and scroll down and scroll down and see all the campaigns that are under 100K, some of them dramatically lower. It's tough to market 50 to 100K campaigns. I think some of the portals don't want to touch the marketing for campaigns under 50K at that too. It's difficult, and because of the optics, there are private settings on WeFunder, on some other portals. They don't show the full raise amount. I think that's a good approach for getting your first degree audiences in there. I've seen campaigns market at those stages too to cold audiences and get a good conversion rate. So really good things to emphasize. If you're asking yourself, hey, they keep talking about the stages of the plan, what are they? This is the 8-point plan model, and it all goes in order. So the industry analysis gives us information, gives us a pulse on what's happening in the space, things that could be used in the marketing, things that investors are going to need to understand to consider the investment opportunity. Really going in blind if they don't understand the industry. So we certainly need to understand it as marketers, and your team needs to understand it if they're doing the marketing. The competitor marketing audit, so that you can take what's working from other campaigns in the space, uh, add your own inspiration and ideas. Also keep in mind your target audiences are going to be seeing their ads and their marketing as well too. So you definitely need to know what they're doing and on an ongoing basis. Building out your target audience profiles, be very specific about this, and information you find from the competitor market audit will show you which audiences are performing the best for them. You can then look at the touch points of those target audiences with the channel strategy and figure out the best organic and paid touch points of those audiences, the organic content marketing and paid advertising opportunities to reach them, the creative that's going to go into each channel, referring to the visuals, images, and copy, and then strategic partnerships so that you can produce stronger results and quicker using that creative on those channels. The section 7 projections, which we'll get into, that's the area that the CFOs flip directly to. What's this going to cost? What's it going to result in? Show me the numbers. This is an algorithmic strategy. It's what everything leads up to. And you can go backwards and look at any of the other sections. If there's doubt or question marks around it, you can continue to reference this throughout the campaign to see which milestones are being reached, which are not, and recap in the activation section, more or less an executive summary, a couple pages, few pages maybe, on everything that occurred in the plan. So again, you could show it to a third party. We have a client that's going to be doing a whole first degree audience presentation on that section of it. So a lot of different ways to utilize this. And Abby, starting at section 1, taking audiences through this, we normally do it in about a month. What are some of the goals? What are some of the highlights? Where do you think it really starts picking up when looking at the 8 points before we get into section 1 on the next page?
Oh, well, as an account manager, I always start with the tip of the iceberg, right? So we start with the industry analysis and competitor audit. And that's really where I do a ton of research, and I find it really quite interesting because when we do this research on marketing, we actually are looking at how are your competitors doing their marketing, like what keywords are they buying, how is their website traffic looking, like what's working for them or what's not working for them. And I think it's very interesting to kind of go in there without a whole lot of expectations, because unexpected things emerge, right? So that's something that I always actually really enjoy about it, is that I'm always learning something new, and that's makes a
I
good day when
agree.
I learn something new.
I agree. Section 2 is my favorite. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's the goal of this page to pick favorites, but the competitor marketing audit gives me the most information. If I was to do one thing, it would be that. I do know how to fill in the blanks on the other sections based on it. So it could be a biased perspective for those reasons. But the competitor marketing audit, and then section 7 is where it all comes together. So if it was limited to 2 sections for me, it would be
Yeah, that
section
would be
2
those
and
two.
section 7.
I don't know. I'm always trying to stretch our teammates by saying, I always have special points that I want to bring up, like because of certain things that I care about, like target market profile. Often you think about who is a standard person investing in crowdfunding, right? And even if it's 60% male, that means that they're 40% female. So if we're skipping talking about the female audiences, I think that's a miss, right? Like, so I'm always wanting to make sure that we're having a really good look at all the different pieces and thinking about sensible messaging around it. Yeah. Anyway, another thing I always want to bring up, just based on my own personal interest and background, is that I know that sustainability is important for a growing number of consumers. And so if there's something to say about it, I always want to make sure it's being said. And that comes up in the strategy right at the front end. So
Yeah.
those are two
Yeah.
things that I always want to talk about.
And not as an afterthought, but, being focused, talking about the brand's why. We were mentioning this before starting here, but if you can understand someone's why, you can understand them. Same is true with the brand. So making sure those messages, whatever they may be, definitely on sustainability and across a large percentage of our clients is one of them. So having that, at the forefront and determining where it fits in to the campaign. And industry analysis, I could tell you our business development folks will say, hey, clients think a strategy is just research and just an industry analysis. And they said they already know their space. Well, Abby, I know you've worked on some strategies recently that, we presented to founders and they said, wow, I didn't know this at all. I knew that, but these are very interesting stats.
Sometimes there are surprises.
Yeah. I generally see new stats that we're putting here. The next section, the competitor marketing audit, I always do. I generally see new stats here. And if it's for nothing else than to align your marketing team, this could be you, and just when you have your marketing hat on and when you have your CFO hat on, but the marketing side of your business, vendor in-house, whatever it may be, and the overall direction of the raise, direction of the campaign, need to be briefed on it, need to understand it. Even if we're only running advertising, we really need to know your industry, what's happening in the industry outside of equity crowdfunding, what's happening in the industry that investors are going to see and take note of. Otherwise, in many respects, we're shooting in the dark or even being ignorant to your entire space. So I would make sure that whoever's working on your campaign is briefed on this, they understand it, and they know more than what the investors are going to. I mean, they're curating this experience for the investors. So you don't want there to be any surprises or blinders.
Yeah, at a minimum, it gives us a baseline for what statistics we could talk about. Because, we want to be referencing the right numbers in terms of market opportunity, right? So that's kind of a basic thing, but it's important.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we use those numbers, how big the industry is, all different types of stats in the creative, in the messaging as a result. So we look for standouts there, and then we look to see who the players are. So what is the competitive market landscape? If we're looking at, let's say, 3 industries in the industry analysis, because brands usually fit into 2 industries when they're new, when they're innovative, when they're different. Hey, let's look at this space. Let's also look at that space. Or, even if it's a very straightforward business, a restaurant, let's look at your local market. Let's look at the national market. There's different industries to really dive into here. And then generally the third being the type of raise they're doing. So regulation crowdfunding. Tell me about the industry. What's happening? Reg D accredited investor raise. What's happening? What are the numbers? Who's doing what? What are the successful raises? As we start to identify those successful raises, as we start to pinpoint who are the groups taking the most market share in those industries, we want to analyze them from a marketing perspective. And Abby, you were mentioning some of the standouts when you look at competitors' marketing. I know there's a few campaigns you're working on right now in the real estate space. What were some standouts of the marketing there? What were some things that you were not expecting to see in terms of channels, tactics?
Sure. Oh, well, channels are interesting because there's a lot of innovation happening in how you reach people online, right? And there are new things that we need to be incorporating more of, right? Like Discord. How do you have a hosted conversation with interested parties on Discord? That's pretty new to me. But I see that in certain industries like cannabis or maybe real estate or crypto, there are certain categories that tend to congregate in different areas, right? So TikTok is huge in terms of content. Um, that's kind of new for us too, right?
Mhm.
LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Um, it's really interesting to see because we can actually, like, when we get into the traffic for websites, we can see where's traffic coming from. Like, I thought it was really interesting with the real estate one about all the keyword ad buys that competitors were doing can be very expensive. And then one small thing that stood out was that a keyword that was misspelled was less expensive, but still can drive a lot of traffic depending on what it is. Like investor is one of those things that can, I guess, be spelled wrong commonly. It's funny little things, right? But it's interesting to see what comes out. I really liked what attracts my interest usually when I'm looking at an ad is a video. And turns out that I'm not alone in that. So anytime I start doing research for any of my clients, then all of a sudden I'm targeted with all of the ads for their competitors, which it helps my research. And then I can see, well, what messaging resonates with me? Messaging would resonate with the other target market profiles that we've established as important for their category? Um, and how are they reaching these people, right? It's very interesting. I like this part. There's a lot you can dig into there. And especially we have all of these SEO tracking, website traffic, looking at their ads. We see what kinds of ads they're running. Um, there's a lot to learn from there. And I like to dig into that part. So I don't know, Jason, what do you think?
Success leaves clues, and we want to stand on the shoulders of those groups that are working and tap into some of those same traffic sources, some of those same tactics. Our whole philosophy towards marketing, it's the name of my podcast, it's on a lot of our documents, it's on this document. Test, optimize, scale is how we summarize our approach, marketing growth at that in 3 words. Well, it wasn't easy to do, by the way. I actually went through the 313 method with Ryan Folan to put this together, TEDx speaker. But when we see something working, again, it tells me they've tested other things. They're continuing it because it's delivering for them. They're not doing it for fun. They're not doing it to, show somebody, hey, we are marketing, as much as this is driving. We're talking about small business, mid-market marketing. It has to be producing results. So I want to analyze and know what they're doing organically and paid.
Mhm.
As Abby mentioned, we'll look at platforms like SimilarWeb. We'll try to understand where traffic's coming from. They'll tell us which audiences are going over there and getting to different stages and where they're coming from, all different traffic sources. We'll look at platforms like SpyFu and be able to tell, hey, what search keywords are they showing up for on Google, on Yahoo, on Bing, on other search platforms in different markets? Which ones are they paying for? Are they spending 100K on search ads per month, like we saw for some of the real estate platforms?
Yeah.
Sometimes these numbers are wrong, but we want to get a sense of it. We want to get a story. And usually they're wrong on the small side. It's usually far greater than what's showing up there. But we could see, and as Abby's mentioning, some of the keywords that are real drivers for them. Could also see the actual search ads, the messaging, what's working, what are your audiences currently clicking on today. You could already see what is making them move, not by assumption, but by looking at the actuals. We do the same thing with social, by the way. So for Facebook, you could look at any live Facebook campaign. There's a link. You could even just Google Facebook ad library. You choose the category or select all. You type in any page that's running advertising today. You could see every one of their advertisements. Out of all of these data investigations on Facebook, they put this out. You can literally see any campaign. So look to see what's driving for them. It's not going to be one ad, it's going to be multiple. Showcase that, talk about what you think's working, not working, get to the organic side on social media platforms, see what day and time of week they're posting, which is a key metric when it comes to heavy duty media buying. By the way, you're spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands a day on advertising. You need to know which days and times of the week are performing for you the best. A little tougher to do on a 5K per month ad budget, but as you get to higher amounts of data, more conclusive data, if you will, on advertising, it's a key metric. They'll show you on organic. You can see, hey, Tuesday, 5:20 p.m., those posts seem to be getting the most engagement. Maybe we should incorporate that, but you can see how often they're posting, the types of content, and again, which ones are getting the most engagement as a cue. You could do a Google News search. You could see which publishers are talking about them. You could do hashtag searches. You can see which influencers are talking about them on social platforms. We go on King's Crowd for equity crowdfunding campaigns. We see which campaigns are moving the fastest, when they had different hockey sticks in their charts, if you will, when they really grew, and try to correlate events to understand why these campaigns were successful, why they move. I sign up for an email newsletter myself still, even if I'm not the account manager and working inside the campaign. I want to know what these other groups are sending out to prospective investors, to their audiences as a whole. There's a platform called Milled. You could see past email newsletters of a lot of different platforms. So you want to be able to tackle the email. I look for webinars, look for conferences they're going to be at, look for conferences they're sponsoring. Again, I have a checklist, and can have this sent to you if you reach out to us. This is the shorter version, by the way, but we'll generally look at 3 competitors. We'll look at the search engine data, as I mentioned on SpyFu, the site research. Make sure you're looking at the site, the landing pages, the offering page, if applicable, the video, talked about social analysis, advertising, email, third-party coverage. I was wondering what I forgot. Wasn't looking at this while rifling through it. Case studies. Case studies. I find that I'm a decent Googler, if you will, and I have a lot of different tactics. Usually pour a cup of coffee and just go at it for an hour. But I've found a lot of luck putting in the company name. Remember, you're looking at 3 different competitors. You do this for each, plus the word case study. You'd be surprised how many agencies, how many groups talk about what they did for the company, and you could see the actual metrics, the cost per click, the cost per conversion, the return on ad spend, and find metrics to base this on. The bigger the company is, the more likely it's out there. If it's a mid to large size company, they're probably on Big Spy as well too. You could find case studies. I reference this even if it's for similarities. And then you want to do a SWOT analysis and takeaways. So SWOT: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. You don't have to take everything you're doing, but what can you take? What was a strength? What was a weakness? What's an opportunity for us? What is a potential threat if other audiences are seeing it? You want to be mindful of this. I wouldn't create a marketing campaign without doing these stages. We'll launch an advertising campaign quick if asked. We talk about this and how they're skipping it with issuers, but why would you go live? Why would you spend thousands of dollars more? We have campaigns that spend more marketing without knowing what you're going against, without knowing what your audience are seeing, and without knowing, hey, this worked for other groups, so I'm going to use it. This didn't work for other groups. I'm not going to invest into it. Don't skip this step.
Yep, that's right. Don't
Abby,
skip
I knew I
that
threw a
step.
lot at it there, but anything to add to that?
No, I think it's don't skip that step. That's all. Yeah.
And just going back to the document here, I like looking at it from the whole view. You start with your industry overview, you move to your competitor marketing audit, you see what's making these campaigns tick. You're looking at the audiences that it is coming from, You can now build your target audiences. You can now say, here are the key audience demographics, behaviors, and touch points depicted down to the audience persona level. I like putting a picture. I like putting a name. I want to understand what they do on the weekends. It personifies it. I want to know, yeah, Larry would invest in this. Or, Kristen would never participate in this deal. Why would she care about this messaging versus just assuming that it's one audience?
And this is important because we want to know how to target our ads, how to target our messaging, and which specific little niche of our many audiences that we need to focus on. Because we want to scale where we see performance, right? So once we hone in on audiences that are really resonating with the messaging, um, this is an important starting place for that.
Absolutely. And $500 to $1,000 as an average investment for Reg CF is what we say. 1250 to 200, I'm sorry, 2250, 2250 for Reg A Plus campaign. We look at as an average. Reg D, much different, probably upwards of 100K, with 10K, more commonly 25 to 50K minimums, 100K minimums, 250K minimums. Uh, Working on one that's going to be larger than that for minimums, so it adds up more. But the reason I'm going over these numbers is, let's say it's $1,000 average investment, which is high for a Reg CF. You're going to need 1,000 investors per every $1 million. If you're going to raise a full 5 million, it's 5,000 investors. It's probably not going to be one investor. Don't picture it to be just Mark Cuban or Mr. Wonderful or anything like that. Picture every one of the sharks. Picture every one of your consumers. Picture everyone you see as start engine owners, and some of them list that they're a start engine owner on LinkedIn. You could see it as a job title. You want to look at some of the reviews on WeFunder, on Republic. It'll show investors, not every investor, but investors that opt in and give a comment on why they invested. Look at their picture, look at their profile. Some of them connects to LinkedIn. Make sure you're accurate. It's not one individual. It's more of a spectrum of different people who are investing. Talk about who they are, talk about how you're going to reach them. So when you get to the marketing channel section, as Abby said, you know how to target, you know how to message, you know how to create variants to speak to these different audiences.
This is usually where I lean on my teammates pretty strongly, because there are lots of choices when it comes to paid and organic channels, and we want to do a lot of emphasis around organic channels, but there are reasons to also be adding and layering in different paid channels, right? And so we need to analyze that ahead of just jumping into making any decisions, right? So you have a plan and you have options, and you need to know what your options are. It turns out there are quite a variety of marketing channels that are possible, and you probably aren't going to do them all. You have to narrow it down. You have to make choices. So if we know who we want to reach and where they tend to be online, then we have a better chance of having success. And it's good to know if, oh well, one's not working, then we can optimize, right? So we do have options. And then we
All
scale
facts.
into where we're seeing success, right? So it
Mhm.
all builds together. And yeah, I mean, we have a great team that supports every client, and you know it's good. I really like that part when, oh well, we get together a couple times a week to talk about everybody, right? Every single client, everybody gets some personalized attention, but in the background, nobody, it's just happening among our team. And something that I really enjoy about my job is when we get together and we come up with recommendations to optimize. So, okay, well, this is working, this isn't working. Here's, maybe we try a new creative, maybe we try a new audience, maybe we shift channels. I think those are really important reasons to have a strategy.
All facts. I like how you highlighted that you can have strategies for each channel, even if you're unsure whether you're going to use them or not. You're essentially exploring the viability, then prioritizing which ones you want to begin with, being able to incorporate more. If it's working and you want to scale, if it's not working and you need to try something different, but figuring out, hey, what would we do on TikTok? How would we incorporate Twitter? Is there anything we could do on Reddit? What about Quora? Being able to determine what, if anything, would be done on Clubhouse. All of this can be brought up in the channel section. It's speaking to what you put in the target audience, portion of the strategy thus far and referencing what competitors were doing. Again, it all goes in sequence. Before we get into creatives, Abby, love how you mentioned the team here. We have, a full cohort of experts working on these sections, from graphic design to video editing, content marketing, that really come to bat in these creative sections. And you were talking about some of the meetings, just to show what goes on at an agency. And I know similar things, even more in depth at times, that go on in house. There's daily huddles with all departments. There's department huddles. We have morning meetings. We have department meetings at the beginning of the week, everything to set it up, all before the weekly reporting calls with the clients and discussing what's coming next. But it all begins here of, hey, let's look at the assets the client currently has. What assets do you have on file for the campaign? Let's look at what we want to create from there in addition to that. And let's determine what goes where. What are the highlights from the offering page? We don't want to offer anything new outside of that. What are some other marketing taglines, if any, that can be used across organic channels or wherever we're posting it? What's going to go where? Let's build out our first content calendar. Let's build out themes that will be used through the course of the campaign. As mentioned earlier, you can have this designed for your entire campaign, ads, organic, email, everything, mapping it out here before the campaign.
Yeah, we really like it when our clients come to us with established brand guidelines, but that's not always the case. And we can, that's all right. I find myself often asking for new creatives about midway through the campaign, and it's always around milestones, portal updates, and I'm usually looking for sort of more informal selfie style videos, just because we really want to mix it up. We want to keep it interesting and give people new information across time. So yeah, it's a lot of this is, graphic based, and we want to have eye-catching, interesting things and it not get boring. We need to mix it up. So those are sort of
and make sure your creatives are good.
Yeah.
Just leave it at, I won't leave it at that. I'll leave that as the top line, but the average valuation for a Reg CF right now is $20 million. Most of the creatives I see don't match a company of that size. It doesn't feel like it's coming out of a company when I'm doing competitor market research, except maybe the top campaigns. And maybe that's why the top campaigns are getting all the investors right now. I saw a stat that said the top 5% are getting, the majority, throwing a high percentage there of the investors. So you really make sure you're putting your best foot out the door. We've worked on content before. Is your brand living its best life? Meaning, don't sell your brand short. Don't do something just to piecemeal and let's see if it works. Really have it reflect the investment opportunity that you're filing. What about strategic partnerships? Why is this important?
Oh, it can be important in a few different categories, right? It helps build social proof, right? Having partnerships helps you establish yourself as, being legitimate. And that's important because, it's all being conducted online. So the strength of your partnerships helps you build up your own brand strength. Strategic partnerships can help you get the word out. It can, depends on what kind of a partnership we're looking at, right? Whether it's, as part of the strategy, I'm always wanting to have a 10,000 foot view and also the really like day-to-day practical stuff, right? So on the 10,000 foot view, you're looking at like, who else is, how are your competitors partnering up with other people and why, right? And so it really depends on what industry you're in and what kinds of partnerships you're going to be looking for. It is an important piece. It helps build, like I said, the social proof, but it also helps you gain your business momentum. So I think it's really important that you give consideration to it. And we always incorporate it into our strategy plan as another layer. Part of it's publisher outreach. There's a lot that you can consider here. What would you say, Jason?
I think you really hit the nail on the head there. It's, putting together a perspective map and messaging sequence, whether it's for strategic partners, prospective investors, publishers, which include financial publishers such as email newsletters, podcasts, blogs, websites, social pages, anywhere there's an existing pool of your target audiences and you can get in contact with the administrator, the organizer of that, be it another brand or a small group of investors, it can have a big impact. And yeah, think you really hit the nail on the head there. It's how I've seen things grow the quickest, but it's also hit or miss. So it's good that it's put into place. Don't think that it's going to deliver the whole campaign for you. It can, but don't put all your eggs in one basket. All of this leads into the projections, budget allocations, projections, different ways to say this section, but it's basically that algorithmic roadmap. So impressions to clicks, use average clicks per channel. Let's say it's Facebook ads. We say 1%. The majority of ads we run have hit a 2 to 5% click-through rate. But of all the impressions you're getting of the content, small percentage of them are actually going to get to your site, get to your offering page, get to your lead form. Then from there, if you're getting a 2% conversion rate, in the eyes of Google, you're hitting an average conversion rate, which means 1 out of 50 audience members. And it's really after 7 to 17 touch points. For some of these sites, if you're getting a 2% to 10% click through, meaning they're getting to the next stage of the checkout process, and then a 2% to 10% there, depending on what your stages are, those percentages could increase, but you want to project accordingly and don't expect to see anything higher than average on any of these stages, because what you're looking at is a higher transactional value than most e-commerce, which at the end of the day, from a digital perspective, you're selling securities on this website. You're using a portal. There's a lot of other words we could throw around it, but the transactional value is much higher than a standard e-commerce product. So if we're looking at digital marketing 101, you wouldn't want to think you're going to get a 10% conversion rate and you're going to drive 10,000 people there and see 1,000 investors off of it. It's just not practical. It doesn't reflect the majority of campaigns. So you want to be mindful of that. You also want to look at the transactional value so you can project how many investors you need, so on and so forth, and continue to keep track of that throughout the course of the campaign.
Yep, I would agree with you there. And I think it's important to note that it is kind of a numbers game, right? And you can't expect that you throw, let's say, $1,000 a week at ads. You're only going to drive a certain amount of traffic, right? That could be that
Exactly.
maybe 50,000 new people see your ad this week, and that 2 to 5% maybe click through to your offering page. So what's that, like 1,000 new views to your offering page? That's excellent. But it's, in terms of scaling, you have to have expectations about what traffic ads drive and the total number of investors that you need in your campaign to be successful, right? Because if you have a budget that doesn't match your expectations, then ultimately you might end up being disappointed, right? So I think it's important to note, just remembering that sales is a numbers game, and at the end of the day, this is a sale, right? So you have to have a budget that matches what you're trying to do, right?
Very well said. And love how you included the scale in there. We'll get asked about budgets from clients. And sure, we could start at virtually any ad budget you'd like, but at the same time, you're going to have an uphill battle. You want to throw some critical mass on it. You want to get to those higher numbers of traffic
Yeah.
required to substantiate the amount of investments that you need. It is going to be various touch points. You have a limited timeline. Plan accordingly.
Right. And it's not
Plan to
just ads
fail.
that you want to spend on.
Yeah.
I think LinkedIn's a really powerful tool. I think email
Oh yeah.
outreach can be a really powerful tool. There are different types of ads. So you have to say, oh, do I want to be boosting my social posts? That's another budget decision, right? Like, which channels do I want to be promoting on? Well, those have budget consequences, right? So these are things that you need to just plan for. And, it's important.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then clarity can be difficult, but you need to recap this entire strategy. Many of ours are 40 to 60 pages. Some of the ones I've been seeing coming out recently are even higher, into a couple pages. You want it to be concise. as I said, to come up with test optimized scale, it's a whole process. You're writing 3 sentences, combine it to 1 sentence, breaking down to 3 words, just part of the 3-1-3 method. Taking 60 pages down to 2 can be even more difficult, but your audience, i.e. your team, will appreciate it, and it'll give them more clarity around it.
I know we're running up on the end of our hour here.
Yes.
And yeah, but we just want to come up with some key recommendations there at the end for just really specific steps on what we see to be the strongest way forward on your campaign. So, yeah.
Exactly. And please reach out to us for a copy of this deck and/or the strategy checklist. Have a lot of great quotes to end things here, and how it creates multiple touch points for investor to see throughout the campaign, encourage to invest and build traction around a brand's raise. We have notes on how it could be adjusted and optimized towards success, and that a successful strategy is crucial to a successful raise. See a list of questions here. Please feel free to reach out to us directly, and could address all of those firsthand with you.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Everything from portal selection to different channels to prioritize. See various questions in here that we can address. So please feel free to reach out to us there. Abby, you have been a fountain of great insights and information here. Any final notes to leave the audience with today?
Oh, well, thank you, Jason. I really always appreciate when clients come to us with asking us to help think around the strategy, because it does give us that crucial thinking time, and it involves critical thinking, right? And so I really think it's important, to have a look at the industry, your competitors, who you're going to be marketing to, how you're going to be doing it, which way you reach them, and have some thoughtfulness around why you made those choices, right? Because we know that crowdfunding isn't very, the statistics are that it's not necessarily easy. So if you have a plan, then you can work toward that plan with a greater chance of success. So I think that's the main reason why I think strategy is important.
Very, very well said. Really like that recommendation. I'm just going to echo that and invite any listeners to get in touch with Abby on LinkedIn, myself, DNA, reach out to us. We welcome these warm marketing chats at any point. Want to see a higher level of success industry wide, and feel it as a duty to be able to talk about what we're seeing work or seeing not work in efforts towards that, whether we end up physically partnering with a group or not. Please feel free to reach out. We have a lot more info than this to give. Well, thanks again, Abby. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next monthly webinar. Bye. Thanks, everyone.